All right, let's talk about per Stirpes versus per capita each generation. These are two different types of distribution patterns that take place when one of your beneficiaries passes away. And it's a way of saying, giving an answer of what will happen to your assets, no matter if you've been specific or not. So typically, a client will say, I want it to go to this beneficiary or to their descendants per Stirpes or to their descendants per capita if they've passed away. So it's a way of having estate planning carry on without having to be absolutely specific. So per Stirpes is a pattern that is very traditional in estate planning. You probably have when you think of estate planning, you probably think of per Stirpes. So this one, we have Tom Client, and then he has three children, Pete and Paul and Mary. So Peter, Paul, and Mary. And it only comes into play if two children pass away or two first generations. So Pete and Paul have passed away. What's going to happen to the grandchildren of Tom? What are they going to inherit? Well, in per Stirpes, uh, the grandchildren of Paul, or so Paul's children, they Polly gets the entire portion that's allotted to Paul because the portions flow downwards, so they flow down vertically. So think of it as a pipe, and it gets divided according to branch of the tree, and it flows down within that pipe. So here, Tom, Dick, and Harry have their siblings. There's three of them. They split their father's 1/3, each getting a third of a third, which is a ninth. Mary's still alive. She still gets her portion. So this is often a way of dividing up the estate for those clients that see their children as individual lines and their grandchildren as extensions of their children. So they don't see their children as equal and then their grandchildren as equal and in relation to them as the client. So for example, if all three children passed away, you can see that every one of the grandchildren, depending on which family they live in and how many children are in that family, they will inherit differently. So that is per Stirpes. Now, per capita at each generation is different. The divisions are spliced according to how related, how close in relation you are to the client, so to you. So here, Pete and Paul, they've passed away once again, and their children are inheriting instead. And you can see that their portions have been poured into the same pot and then divided equally among the grandchildren. So now we see that Tom, Dick, Harry, and Polly all receive 1/6 of the 2/3 instead of their 1/9 and 1/3. So Mary's alive, she still gets her third. Now, if all of the children pass away, so everything is going to the grandchildren, you can see everyone, all the grandchildren get an equal amount. So I know that clients feel very passionately about this, so be thinking about it. I know I've one client, or this wasn't a client, this was an individual that I knew, and they told me the story. They actually had per Stirpes was in the trust, but they felt like that was unfair to the grandchildren, so they distributed it per capita at each generation, had all the beneficiaries sign off, and they changed it. Another clients, when frankly, the majority of my clients do choose per capita each generation, but I've had clients when they hear the idea of per capita each generation, they're absolutely abhorred, want nothing to do with it, and they must have per Stirpes. So I do not make this decision lightly. I don't make it at all. I want to make sure you're educated and you buy into whatever decision or whatever way it's going to flow in your documents. Once again, what your wishes are, we will draft specifically. This is just the backup. This is just the hey, if it goes to here, it goes here, it goes here, it goes here, and then it goes here per Stirpes or per capita each generation, just so that there's always an answer for who is your beneficiary. And that's the difference between per Stirpes and per capita each generation.